This is WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. And we have with us at WZRD Snezana Zabic. How are you today, Snezana? Snezana? Let us play a little music for now and we'll resolve our technical difficulties.
Oh, it's one for Joe, don't let your man go. He's a dreamer, darling, he's even kind of slow. I don't believe the tales he tells, but the road is nice to hear.
This is WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. And we have with us our Chicago local musician, Snezana Zabic. How are you today, Snezana?
Good. How are you?
Very, very well. Well, Snezana, uh, you have taught and you have emigrated to the U.S. and you are oh, I am sorry, you're not located in Chicago. You are in
I am. I am.
you are. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Yes. Yes. Tell us about how you started your musical career and tell us more about what your past albums and music is.
Mhm. Um, so currently I'm in a band called Rent Party,
Okay.
and and I sometimes perform solo and sometimes release some music solo. And for that, I typically use the moniker SZ, which are the initials of for my name.
Yes.
My full name is Snezana Zabic, which not a lot of people can pronounce. I'm originally from Yugoslavia,
Mhm.
and so Rent Party started over 10 years ago as a duo.
Mhm.
It was me and my friend Heather Brown.
Mhm.
Then we were joined by and we both played guitars and sang and wrote songs. And then we were joined by bass player Matt Subchik and drummer Holly Shapiro. After that, Heather left the band. Now it's the three of us, me, Matt, and Holly. We've been playing together for probably about 9 years overall. And as a trio, something less than that, maybe like 7 years as a trio, not counting the pandemic break because
Mhm.
everybody went to Twilight Zone for that time period,
Mhm.
and there were no practices, no shows. But yeah, so we've released two CDs. The first one is called Burn It Down, and the second one is called Corto.
Mhm.
And yeah, we play around Chicago. We've also played in other cities over the years. Just we've played Cleveland a couple of times, Detroit. Um, I've played New York, New Jersey,
Mhm.
Minneapolis. We'll
Mhm.
go anywhere we're invited. We just say yes to everything.
So when you do go abroad, did you try to contact people like friends and get a gig through your network, or some people heard about your music and listened to your music and invited you?
Mostly it's been through people that I actually know through either the music scene, various music scenes around the country, or actually even through literature, because I'm also a poet and a prose writer. So,
Mm.
and there's a lot of overlap between people who do music, who write songs, and people who write poetry and other forms of literature. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of like collaboration there, and yeah, it's mostly been like that through uh, networks of people that I already know, and it's just something that keeps growing and keeps kind of sprouting. And every once in a while, someone stumbles upon us or upon my work, and then they invite me. That happens too. So it's all kinds of. But I think mostly, and I think that's the case with most musicians and creative people. Um, you foster these connections and friendships and collaborations around the country, and then you invite one another. You share your spaces, and that's how everything keeps on plugging along.
Mhm. Definitely. What about poetry and music? Which came first?
Poetry came first for me. I I started publishing my poetry when I was a college student in Belgrade, Serbia, where I was studying. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, this is like in the early to mid '90s, and I didn't pick up a guitar uh, until after I graduated, and I graduated from university back in '96. It feels like I've lived many lives
Mhm.
in the past 50 years that I've been on the planet. But when I graduated in '96 in Belgrade, it was really hard to find a job or just figure out how to live. And I was a refugee at the time, uh, and um, but we had a guitar in our apartment, and I picked it up and started learning how to play chords and put chords together, and that's how I started writing songs as well. So that was
Mhm.
back then, but yeah, but poetry has been around my whole life, and and I do keep those two things. I mostly keep them separate,
Mhm.
but then there are also overlaps as well.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, because when you write lyrics, sometimes you might turn to your poetry, right?
exactly. Yeah, you're right. I mean, sometimes you get an idea, and at first, maybe you're not sure whether it's going to be a poem or a song. Although lately, and that was definitely the case in the beginning, but uh, the more I practice poetry on one hand and songwriting on the other, when I get an idea, I know what it's going to be. Usually, if I get an idea for a song, it does come with some music, in my head.
Mhm.
And then I take that little idea and I develop it into a song immediately with my guitar. So the music and the lyrics come together. And then when I get an idea for a poem, uh, it comes as purely as language,
Mhm.
not music, and so that happens that way. So
Mhm. How young were you when you started writing poetry, and what inspired you?
I uh, I started writing poems, like writing them down on pieces of paper as soon as I could write. I mean, I still have this memory of writing down my first poem when I was probably maybe 6 years old, uh, 5, 6 years old. I believe I have this image in my memory. It was all capital letters. I think I could only write all caps, and I remember that it mentioned a plum and it mentioned a boy.
Mm.
It was both of those things were from my imagination completely, and I didn't save that. I don't know what I probably threw it away, probably didn't show it to anyone. I think I remember that moment of creating something out of nothing as a small child,
Mhm.
and just like remembering that feeling, and I wanted to keep recreating it. So since then, I've been writing poems, and then at some point, when I was in high school, maybe like late high school, beginning of college years, I acquired enough skill, and at the same time, my poetry was still a little bit naive and fresh, and I had great success publishing it. It was never repeated. Wherever I sent my poems, they were published, you know. And I think it was that combination that I see now in my students' work when they kind of like reach over the threshold of like being kind of unskilled to acquiring some true skills, and then combined with this freshness, that's kind of, it's hard to grasp, and you definitely lose it, of course, over the years, and it has this quality that it's irresistible.
Mm.
So that's when I started publishing, when I was about 20 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's you must be very, very, very talented to be able to publish like that. Uh, s- when did you start adding music? When did you start singing?
So I started when I was in my early 20s, so maybe like 22, 23. But there were a lot of interruptions to those attempts.
Mm.
My first public performances as a songwriter, as a singer, were probably um, 99, 2000, but that was all interrupted. 99, I was in Belgrade.
Mm.
There was a NATO bombing of Serbia, of course, Kosovo, Serbia, Belgrade, all the whole thing, and I had to flee. And then I was in Prague for a while. In 2000, I was playing music there with friends, nothing really serious. I was in Germany also in 2000. I played there. I played with friends. We put together shows with music and dance. So it was like. Uh, for a long time, it was I would start and then I would quit because I had to move, or I was being bombed, or something, either a colossal disaster or just life. And then I've been continually performing since about 2009.
Mm. What about the colossal disasters and moving? How did that play into your music?
Um, I think it made those colossal disasters, especially, made an indelible mark.
Mm.
And when I bring new songs to my bandmates, we practice, we get together about once a week, and then occasionally we bring new songs. And my lyrics are a little bit obscure, they're not super, for the most part, they're kind of poetic, they're not like you get what it's about upon
Mm.
first hearing or anything like that.
Mm.
And sometimes my bandmates have to ask me, what is this song about? And I was like, I tried writing it about just living in Chicago. Let's say there's a song called Chicago,
Mm.
that I wrote, and I really wanted to just kind of write it as almost like a love letter to Chicago. And then very quickly, I started remembering all the upheavals, racism, segregation that still exists here, and on the other hand, a celebration specifically of what Black people moving from the South brought culturally to Chicago. I know that, but it's all combined, protest and celebration. And so, like every song I write, in a way, is like protest against injustice, war, in kind of like not really direct terms, and then just celebration of life. So it's always there. It's kind of this duality.
Mhm. So, how did you find your voice?
What through collaborations with people. So whether it's with literature or with music, uh, no one is an island, and isolation can work for a while, and it has worked for some people, but I uh, for me, it comes from collaborating.
Mm.
So especially with music, when I played just literally just by myself, my rhythm wasn't that great, because when you're playing just with yourself, you can you can change your rhythm as much as you want.
Mm.
Tempo, you can have these crazy tempo changes, but it's not actually very pleasant to the listener either. But as soon as I started playing with people, it helped me with tempo, and that's a huge, huge um element of music, especially this kind of music that I'm writing, which is kind of like inspired by pop music and folk music, and
Oh.
in very broad terms, right? So it's kind of like rhythmic music. It's a lot of it is aimed, for dancing or bringing people together, and you need rhythm for that. You need tempo,
Uh,
and 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 then playing with different instruments, not just my guitar, but with drums, bass. Usually it's drums and bass in my case.
mm,
Um, it makes me do different things with my voice,
mm,
uh, because now it's a part of a mosaic of all these low and high notes and loud and soft sounds. So it's all through. It's like that through working with others to playing with others.
mhm. What about the instruments? Did they have any effect on your voice?
I since I started late, trying to learn instruments late, and guitar was the instrument that we had lying around.
Mm,
Um, yeah, yeah, I probably did have. I'm not really aware of how that really plays a role. And if I think about it, I've never performed with like a piano, let's say, or any other instruments. It's always been either just guitar or guitar bass drums. So that's all I know really. And it probably has had great impact, but I don't know how to explain it or how to really reflect on it. But that's a great question. I have to think about it and maybe look for some collaborators who play other instruments just to experiment with that.
mhm. Yes. You said that uh, you, you explain how you found your voice, but when you sing, and then how about the audience? How do you gauge the audience, and do you sense their mood, and then adjust your performance?
Um, I I don't really adjust my performance, to be honest. My attitude is, I do my best. We practice a lot. I practice at home. I pay close attention to what I'm writing.
Mhm,
But as far as, once we're out there performing, there are all kinds of performers out there, that I see as an audience member. And I've always gravitated toward performers that are a little bit more aloof, a little bit, I don't know why, a little bit more almost somewhat distant, and that has always appealed to me. And that's mostly how I am.
mhm,
I mean, it doesn't mean that I'm not aware of the audience,
mhm,
but I haven't had like experiences where I had to adjust. People more or less know what to expect when they come see us or when they come see me, and they always seem to pay attention. I haven't had hecklers. There's always small audiences, and usually with house lights on. When I say house, I mean it's bars, it's small clubs. I
mhm,
don't play, theaters or any kind of venues where I don't see the audience. We see each
mhm,
other. We're kind of equals.
mhm,
And or completely equals in the moment. I don't command their attention. They're free to watch and listen carefully or talk among themselves. They're free to walk out. None of
mhm,
that affects me.
mhm,
But mostly people are grateful to hear some live music and to see people who are like them. Not some celebrities or star material type people, try to entertain them. There's something empowering and different, and I think welcome to see people who are like you, who are no different from you, playing
mhm,
music, being creative, putting stuff out there, because everybody somewhere, almost everyone somewhere within them, right, has the creative urge, has
mhm,
ideas, and and maybe the urge to share it with the audiences, with these small audiences or whoever is interested. But for various reasons people don't do that. Maybe it's shyness, maybe it's lack of time to practice, to really prepare for that. but I think seeing us people like seeing people like me perform, I think it gives them, well, maybe one day I'll do it, and I've heard that from people as well. They're like, I saw you, and I decided, what the hell, I'm gonna I'm gonna pick up an instrument and I'll start a band too. I'll record, I'll release, and that's really that's how it is, with me and audiences. We're equals.
Mm,
The audiences, they're small, we see each other, we talk to one another.
mm,
But when I'm performing, especially with my band, and when we go from song to song, we don't really talk in between songs. But then
mm,
before or after the show, we're mingling, we're talking, we're making friends, with people in the audience. So it's kind of like that,
mm.
very communal.
Yes. When you sing, uh, do you use your diaphragm? Have you had a voice training?
I think I do use my diaphragm, but I've never had voice training. Have you?
Yes, I have.
Oh, okay, okay. So I'm very curious about it, and one day I might take a couple of lessons just to see,
Mhm,
maybe get some tips, I don't know, like but not being trained as a singer has served me so far. And most of my favorite singers uh have never been trained, or maybe have been trained marginally, and most of their style comes from intuitive uh choices that they're making. So a lot of my, like I said, folk music, really old folk music and blues, they're my big influences. And then on the other hand, it's like punk rock and that kind of stuff, So it's all untrained people, and I'm trained as a instrumentalist as well. And I guess that definitely has its drawbacks, but it has its advantages too, in a way. So I'm just kind of, yeah, but I think I do use, I can feel the stuff happening, in my whole body when I'm
mhm,
singing, right? And then I hear like trained singers talk about where voice comes from, and then I sometimes reflect, oh yeah, that's true. I sometimes it's here, sometimes it's here, sometimes it's in the belly, and it's super fascinating. I love hearing trained musicians talk to me about songs and performances,
mhm.
but I have never been trained myself.
Oh, well, it seems as if training helps you breathe better and then project better, and also helps protect your voice too. Because my professor Richard Gersten, he sings like Robert Goulet. He advised us his students about how to not strain the vocal cords, so that there's no pain and then there's no injury.
I fully support that. Where did you find your teacher? Did you?
Wilbur Wright College,
Okay.
yes,
Wilbur
Chicago
Wright. Yeah,
Community
yeah.
College. Yes, he's wonderful.
And was that like a part of like adult education, or were you
Yeah, I
regular?
was pursuing my degree, and then
Oh, you
I
okay.
I had two electives, and I always loved singing, but I always wanted to learn how to sing. So I was hoping that he would teach me how to breathe, and he did.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, that gives me an idea. I mean, they do have community colleges, which is such a great resource. They
Mhm,
do have they offer all kinds of courses that you can take, even if you're not pursuing a degree, right? You can enroll as an adult,
mhm,
and that would be fascinating to look into. Because I know, like Old Town School of Folk Music, there are a lot of private teachers, of course, who offer that, and that's one resource. But I love the fact that in Chicago there are all these resources that are a part of our commons, like
mhm.
public
Yeah.
education, public
Mhm,
parks, libraries, and I always look there first,
mhm.
for courses and yeah, so that gives me an idea. Yeah.
Well, we see that you're wearing a Chicago Public Library shirt. Are you enamored with the words and writing, or are you working at the public library?
When I always hear that saying, they're like, what is they say, like dress like dress for the work you want to do, you wish to do,
Mm.
And I'm not a librarian. I don't have any training, and I have never looked into. I don't think I can be hired there, but I would love to work there. But no, it's my support for this wonderful resource that we have
Mm.
in the city.
Mm.
Branches in every neighborhood, I frequent, my local branches and all the other branches.
Mm.
People don't know, like you can of course get books on any subject you want, but you can also get help with all kinds of, with your taxes, with computer skills.
Mm.
You can check out DVDs and records, there are all kinds of free programs, cultural community programs. So I'm just like a big advocate for Chicago Public Libraries
Oh,
as
yes,
much as I can
definitely.
be.
Do you know if the Chicago Public Libraries carry your CDs, your two albums?
You know what? I don't know. That's a great question. Yeah, it's kind of like you make all this effort as a writer, as a musician, but I only recently started. You know how the um that website called worldcat.org. It's
Mm.
one word, obviously.
Yeah.
So it's World Catalog. After all the libraries, or most of them around the world,
Mm.
digitalize their
Mm.
catalogs,
Mm.
someone got the idea to create a website where all of the catalogs are, congregate somehow, right?
Uh-huh. Mm.
So you can look for any title and any author, right?
Mm.
And in the
Mm.
cat on worldcat.org and
Oh.
see which libraries hold the works. And so I only recently got the idea, oh, let me see which libraries around the world have my books, but I
Mm.
haven't looked at which libraries might have my CDs. So that's
Mm.
giving me another idea. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and I could contact them and be like, "Hey, do you want to carry our CDs?"
Mhm. Well, I think that they are interested in the material as long as you give it to them and then no strings attached, they'll be happy to put it in their collection.
You're an idea machine. I love it. I'll do it.
So when you sing locally, where are you usually performing?
It's mostly small bars, and I kind of love performing in those. Most recently, we've played a couple of shows. I'll just give you an example.
Okay.
At this bar called the Sovereign Liquors. It's
Mm.
on Broadway, like Broadway and Granville, that intersection in
Mm.
Edgewater, so just across the border from our neighborhood here in Rogers Park.
Mm.
And we love playing there. They have their own sound system, just like basic stuff. There's
Mm.
not a separate stage, you just play at the end of the bar, by the coolers, by the refrigerators over there.
Yes.
And you set up over there, you're at the same level with the audience. The staff, the attendees are loving, that there's something happening in their bar and they're like cheering you on.
Mm.
And so that's some of my favorite places to play. And we also play outdoor festivals. We just played Porch Fest, Roscoe Village yesterday.
Oh, nice.
Earlier in the summer, we played Porch Fest Lakeview. So this is another one of those, just a community coming together.
Mm.
Homeowners in the neighborhood open up their houses and their porches. Bands set up on their porches or right in front of their houses,
Mm.
and neighbors walk by and or sit in lawn chairs and listen. And it's that's one. We've played another neighborhood festival called Moods and Foods for
Oh.
years now, since their inception. That's in Logan Square. We love those kinds of gigs as well. Farmers markets, anything that's like community oriented. We're great at that. We're not that great at promoting ourselves commercially, or trying to get to the next level. And I think a part of it is this level is probably the best
Mm.
as far as feeding your soul.
Mm.
You're
Yeah.
totally independent. You're in control of everything,
Mm.
and you're just bringing your music directly to those who need it.
Mhm. What is the genre for your music?
Well, we came up with a kind of a tongue-in-cheek, sort of tongue-in-cheek description of our band a long time ago, which is feminist garage folk.
Oh,
Because there's garage rock as a genre, which is one of my favorite genres, and it's kind of like it started with bands in the 60s who teenagers in the 60s who wanted to sound like the Beatles and the Stones
mm,
or like who wanted to sound like Stevie Wonder or something like that, but they weren't really that accomplished. But what
mm,
they created was this kind of raw, really fun guitar sound,
mm,
and that kind of kept on going. That's a through line from the 60s through punk rock through indie rock in the 80s, college
mm,
rock, this kind of
mm,
just enthusiasts, young enthusiasts getting together, learning how to play guitars in a rudimentary level, on a rudimentary level, drums and bass, and then just letting it rip. And
mm,
but we also as songwriters, me and my other bandmates who write songs, so Heather Brown and Matt Sobchik. We're also inspired by roots, American roots music and European roots music. So
mm,
all the blues and folk musicians from the past, like going deep, into the archives, and so that's the folk part.
mm,
And then feminists, we always have like a political, bent to our stuff, and that was just like one we could have picked, anti-racist. There are all kinds of anti-capitalist, all kinds of
mm,
things that kind of define us, but we went with feminists, and yeah, but you could also people describe it as a kind of like throwback to indie rock, 80s, 90s sort of college rock. It kind of sounds like that too.
let's see. You mentioned that uh, it was this question I should have written it down. But when you oh yes, your guitar,
Mhm.
uh, w- your when you started, why did you choose guitar? Was it convenient or did it have the sound that you were looking for?
It was both. It was convenience, but I did listen to guitar music the most, at the time. I have a broad
Who did you
taste.
like to listen to?
So when I first picked up the guitar, a lot of that sort of indie rock music was still in full swing. So in like the mid 90s,
Mm,
and so, but also going back to like new wave and post punk and all that kind of stuff, and that was all guitar music.
mm,
On the other hand, I also always I grew up with hip hop.
mm,
When I was little, when I first saw breakdancing on TV and heard Sugar Hill records and stuff like
mm,
early, it blew
mm,
my mind. But so I think that also influenced, but not so much my music, but my lyrics. Especially like conscious rap, political, message songs in
mm,
the hip hop genre,
mm,
and I kept up with that as well. So, and back then it would have been like Public Enemy and um, a Tribe Called Quest and that kind of stuff. I mean, they always had like fun side to that, but so yeah, it was like anything from uh the Breeders, and they're just on my mind because they're regrouped and they're going to play a couple of shows in Chicago.
mm. Well,
Yeah,
mhm. It sounds as if you're kind of focused on storytelling with the what has inspired you. So, does that derive from your writing? Because you said that you write poetry and then you also write prose. What kind
yeah,
of prose do you write? Is uh, is it nonfiction or is it fiction?
fiction and nonfiction. But so my very first book that I published in '96 in Belgrade was a collection of short stories, And
Mhm.
I kept writing short stories and publishing them, not in the book form, for a while. And then around 2005, I started writing uh, nonfiction, like the autobiographical nonfiction,
Mhm.
which still had elements of poetry and fiction, kind of like this hybrid of storytelling in prose and verse, drawing on my memories and my experiences, but also adding some fictional elements. And so that has been mainly what I've been writing when it comes to prose.
Mhm.
Um, this kind of experimental autobiographical prose mixed with a little bit of poetry as well. And I guess I talk like that as well.
No, it's great. What about the conflict in your country? Did that affect your music and your prose, even your poetry?
It has affected everything I do for sure. Yeah. So I the most direct effect was definitely in this book, Broken Records. Yeah, which is like my kind of a hybrid memoir. It has memoir based essays, it has poetry, and that was my way of putting what I experienced and also what I researched about it. Because when it's happening and you're just kind of trying to survive, you're not really looking into the whys and hows of things. You're just trying to kind of survive, right? But later on, I more and more literature has been written about the breakup of Yugoslavia, and so that book is a result of both my experiences and the literature that I read, and what the effect it had for me personally, and I don't know if that would work for everyone, but it unexpectedly had a therapeutical effect.
Mhm.
And I mean, I think I lucked out that it happened when I was ready for that. Like taking some traumatic experiences out of your head and transferring them onto paper, and not just like one draft, but literally working on it, shaping it into a work of art. It is
Mhm.
taking it outside of yourself and exerting control over it, artistic control, creative control.
Mhm.
And that really helped me kind of really get over it as much as possible.
Mhm.
But uh, at the same time, my total intolerance of any kind of injustice and violence,
Mhm.
uh, it makes my blood boil anything when anything happens around the world, that's horrible like that. And then I then I then writing about it, or letting that those kinds of feelings enter into my writing, songwriting, and poetry and prose, that again has therapeutic effect.
Mhm.
So it has had like uh, influence, and I'm not saying like I'm suffering anymore, far from it, but it's just a constant for sure. Um,
Mhm. What about your readers and listeners? Do they realize what you're doing, and what do they mention about uh, how your music and your prose affects them?
my readers, absolutely, yeah, they get it. If they read me, it's because they're responding to something on that level,
Mhm.
ideological, not just aesthetic.
Mhm.
My listeners, when we're playing live shows, it's rare that anyone can really pay attention to the lyrics. And I'm like that too. When I'm attending a live show, mostly if I'm unfamiliar with the songs, I'm not really paying attention. But I do hear feedback from those who are a little bit more engaged and who listen to the CDs, and they get it. And again, they respond to it, both like on the level of the content, the message of the lyrics, and also what it sounds like to them,
Mhm.
what they're
What is
doing.
some of your political activism, if you would like to discuss that?
Yeah, I'm currently not really politically active outside of my unions, the labor unions that I'm in.
Oh,
So
it's
I
important.
work. So yeah, it is. Yeah, I work as an adjunct professor,
Mm.
uh, and that's been my day job, my livelihood, ever since I graduated from my PhD. So for the past 12 years, I guess.
Mm.
My math might be off, but and so every year, I'm jumping usually from one university to another. Lately, I've been at Loyola very part-time since 2016. I've been and we do have a union there. And so
Mm.
anytime, my union needs volunteers for something,
Mm.
I'm there, So that's one that's like a way of staying an activist in a very practical sense, helping my fellow workers, kind of working on our solidarity and improving our conditions and just the overall for the profession as a whole. So that and the same thing whenever I'm, at a university where workers are unionized or are trying to unionize, I'm active. And so that had been the constant for the past 12 years. And in the past, especially when I lived in back in my home country in Croatia, and in Serbia and other places. But even in the United States, I've always been like kind of lending my support to. I've never been an organizer. I've never been someone who was able to get people together or come up with a campaign. But if I see a campaign I believe in, I join it. If
Mm.
nothing else, foot on the ground, joining a protest, march or in some uh, or more capacity. Like I remember when in Croatia there was my friends were organizing the first LGBTQ Pride parade. This was in
Mm.
2002, and it was at the tail end of my living in that country.
Mm.
I helped. I started a zine. I started an organization. It was
Mm.
also kind of like anti-capitalist because we didn't want to register. We created a zine that we photocopied and then gave away for free. So we really wanted to be outside of the market, but still effective. And we helped organize the parade and then also collected testimonials and published a zine with
Mm.
about those efforts and experiences. And I wrote about it also in my book in Broken Records. And so it's all kinds of stuff, depending on where I'm needed and how much time I have.
So broken records, does that refer to on the surface, or does it refer to a war and its effect on archiving important information?
Both of those things. I mean, so that book is my effort to provide, information for future archives or people who want to look into it in the future. It on a literal level and narrative level. My family, and so I was 17 when the war broke out in my hometown, and my hometown was leveled. I remember I always say, like, when I was little, I would
Mm.
watch pictures of Beirut, on TV and the news. And when I first saw my hometown after the destruction, I immediately thought, wow, this looks like Beirut did on TV, and
Mm.
tons of other places around the city, around the world to this day. So it's something a lot of people around the world have experienced and are still experiencing, unfortunately. And so that's the macro. In microcosm, we lived in an apartment which was full of records. I see the,
Mm.
the Wizard Studio. It's kind of like that. And our apartment was damaged by the bombing, and it was also looted. So that collection was largely lost. And so broken records refers to that in narrative terms. And then also awareness that as an individual, with all of my limitations, the records the record of my experiences and our collective experience is by definition going to be uh, incomplete,
Mhm. Mhm. Because
broken
life is
information.
still incomplete.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But hopefully, with a bunch of us recording our experiences and our thoughts and our analysis, maybe all of that coming together can create a more complete picture.
Mhm. Yes.
And I think it's important that regular people, you know, not politicians, not people in power, not people with money, but just regular people leave their archives behind for the future and for the present.
Mm-hmm.
We
Right.
have enough of the, celebrities and
Yes.
powerful people. How
Mm-hmm.
about the rest of us, the 99%,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there should be an audience for that, hopefully.
Yes.
Well, say, Snezana Zabic, tell us, give us some links to some of your music and how our listeners could learn more about you.
So for my band Rent Party, the best place to go to is rentpartyshy.com. And from there you can access all the links to our records, our CDs, or wherever we're being streamed. Our Facebook page, which is pretty active, and our Instagram page, which is a little less active, but
Mm.
we're trying. We have a Bandcamp page, and an important thing when you look for a rent party is to add Chicago to it, because there is a rent party in Austin. They play
Oh,
like old time
mm,
jazz music. It's a much more appropriate name. And then there was a rent party in Maryland. So ignore that and just rent party Chicago. But rentpartyshy.com, that's our website. And then I have a Bandcamp page for SZ. I guess I can email you the link, and I don't know, you can post it or something like
okay.
that. That's
Yeah.
where I occasionally record, it's my bedroom recordings. And that's like a long tradition of
Mm,
of, uh, of people, semi-amateurs, recording their stuff and releasing it. It used to be on tape, and
mm,
now it's online, and I'm a big supporter of that, and I
mm.
and I try to contribute. So SZ on Bandcamp.
SC and Bandcamp. Okay. Thank you so much, Snezana Zabic, for joining us on WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM today.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you.